The morning I found the receipt, I was looking for a pen. That was all. A simple pen, somewhere in the kitchen drawer where I kept rubber bands and old batteries and the things that didn't belong anywhere else. My daughter-in-law had been staying with us for 3 weeks, by then her and my son, and their 2 overnight bags that had slowly expanded into every corner of my house. I pulled open the drawer, pushed past the rubber bands, and there it was. A folded piece of paper with the logo of a hotel I recognized. A hotel 4 hours north of here, in Savannah, oceanfront room, 3 nights, spa package, dinner reservation at a steakhouse I had heard of, but never been to. The total was $1,847. The card number printed at the bottom was mine. I stood at that kitchen drawer for a long time. Long enough for the coffee to finish brewing and start going cold. Long enough for the morning light to move across the linoleum floor and reach my feet. I folded the receipt back the way I'd found it, placed it exactly where it had been, and closed the drawer. Then I poured my coffee and sat down at the table alone. My name is Patricia. I am 63 years old, and I have lived in this house in Macon, Georgia for 27 years. I bought it with my husband Raymond before the neighborhood had the coffee shop on the corner or the new library branch 2 streets over. We painted every room ourselves. Raymond did the ceilings because I was afraid of the ladder, and I did the trim because my hand was steadier. We raised our son Marcus in the yellow bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the window that looked out over the backyard, where we planted a peach tree the summer he turned 7. Raymond passed 6 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, on a Tuesday afternoon in November. One moment he was here, and then he wasn't, and the world I had built around the 2 of us became a world I had to learn to live in alone. I managed. That is the word I always use when people ask how I've been doing since Raymond. I managed. I kept the house, kept the peach tree, kept the Tuesday routine of driving to the farmer's market on Mulberry Street. I retired from my position at the county school board after 31 years, and I filled my time with a garden, with my neighbor Cora's book club, and with waiting for my son to visit. Marcus called every Sunday. He lived in Atlanta, 45 minutes up the highway, which sounds close until you realize that close and present are 2 very different things. He visited on holidays and sometimes on birthdays. When he started dating Renee, the visits became less frequent. When they got married, they stopped altogether for almost 8 months. I did not say anything about this. I had learned, somewhere in the years after Raymond died, to hold certain things carefully rather than put them down where they might break. Renee was pleasant in the way that some people are pleasant thoroughly, and at the surface. She smiled at the right moments and said the right things, and never once in 4 years of knowing me had asked a single question about who I was before Marcus was born. She did not ask about Raymond. She did not ask about the peach tree, or the school board, or the book I had on my nightstand. She asked occasionally whether I'd thought about downsizing, whether a house this size was really practical for one person, whether I'd looked into those new senior communities out near Warner Robins that were supposed to be very nice. I always said I was fine where I was. The visit that changed everything began on a Thursday in September. Marcus called the Sunday before to say that he and Renee were going through some things. He was vague, the way he got when he didn't want to say something directly, and would it be all right if they stayed with me for a little while, just to get their footing, just until things settled down. I said of course. He was my son. They arrived with luggage enough for 2 months. Renee brought her ring light and the tripod she used for her social media work, which I did not fully understand, but which seemed to involve filming herself in various rooms of my house in the early afternoon when the light came through the windows a certain way. She asked if she could move the armchair in the living room closer to the window. She asked if I had any white throw pillows. She asked these things in a tone that assumed the answer would be yes, and it was, because I was raised to be accommodating, and I had not yet learned that accommodation, offered freely and without limit, is not always received as kindness. The first week was ordinary enough. I cooked dinner. The three of us ate together. Marcus watched television in the evenings while Renee worked on her phone. The second week, things began to shift in ways I noticed but could not yet name. Renee started inviting her friend Danielle over in the afternoons. Danielle was loud in a comfortable way, the kind of loud that fills up a room without asking permission, and the two of them would sit at my kitchen table for hours with their laptops open and their voices carrying through the whole house. I took to spending those afternoons in the garden. My granddaughter Lily came to stay that second weekend. She was 19, Marcus's daughter from his first relationship, a quiet and observant girl who was studying nursing at Georgia State. Lily was the one person in my family who sat with me in the kitchen and asked how I was doing and waited for the actual answer. She brought me a plant for the windowsill, a small potted rosemary, and set it next to the sink without being asked, as if she already knew it belonged there. It was Lily who noticed things before I let myself. "Grandma," she said one morning, quietly, while Renee was still asleep and Marcus had gone out, "did you know they've been using your card for groceries?" I said I knew Marcus had borrowed it once for gas when his wallet was in the car. Lily looked at me for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "It's been more than once, Grandma." I thanked her and changed the subject. But that evening, after dinner, I opened my banking app for the first time in 2 weeks. I was not someone who checked it daily. Raymond had always managed the accounts, and after he died I had learned enough to keep things running, but I had never developed the habit of watching closely. I scrolled back through the past 3 weeks. The grocery trips I knew about. But there were other charges. A clothing boutique in Midtown Atlanta, a restaurant I had never heard of, a subscription service, a charge from a florist, small things mostly, nothing dramatic on its own, but together, over 3 weeks, they added up to more than $400 on top of what I had willingly given. None of it had been asked for. None of it had been mentioned. And then, the next morning, the receipt in the kitchen drawer. Savannah. 3 nights. Spa package. $1,847. I put the banking app down on the counter and looked out the window at the peach tree. The last of the summer fruit was gone. The branches were starting to thin toward fall. Raymond had planted that tree the year Marcus was 7, and Marcus had climbed it every summer until he was 12. And now, Marcus was 41 years old, and his wife had charged a Savannah hotel to my credit card without a word. I thought about Raymond. I thought about what he would have said, standing at this same window. Raymond was a quiet man, but not a passive one. He had a particular stillness that came before action, the way the air goes calm before a storm rolls in from the south. I recognized that stillness in myself, that morning in September, standing at my own kitchen window. I did not raise my voice. I did not say anything at all. That evening, Renee came into the kitchen while I was making dinner and sat at the table in the way she did when she wanted something slightly sideways, one leg folded under her, as if the conversation she was about to have was casual, which meant it was not. "Patricia," she said, "I've been thinking. Marcus and I are planning a little trip. Just a long weekend, nothing major. Savannah, actually. We both really need it. Things have been so stressful." I kept my back to her, stirring. "That sounds nice," I said. "We were thinking, since you've been so generous already with letting us stay." She paused. The pause was designed to remind me of my own generosity before the next ask arrived. I had learned to recognize this particular architecture of manipulation, though it had taken longer than I was proud of. "We were thinking it would be so helpful if we could put it on your card. Just the hotel. We'll cover everything else." I turned from the stove. "When are you thinking of going?" I asked. "Next weekend," she said. "I already found a great place." Oceanfront. I looked at her for a moment. She met my eyes with the pleasant, surface-level smile. "Let me think about it," I said. She blinked. That was not the answer she had prepared for. "It's just," she started. "I'll let you know," I said, and turned back to the stove. That night I could not sleep. I lay in the dark in my bedroom, Raymond's side of the bed still somehow his. After all these years, and I thought about the shape of the past 3 weeks, the gradual rearranging of my house, the card charges, the armchair moved without asking, the afternoons I had retreated to the garden, the way Marcus looked past me at dinner, toward his phone, toward whatever Renee was saying, away from the woman who had raised him in this house and painted the trim because her hand was steadier. I had been disappearing, slowly, in my own home. The thought arrived not with anger but with a kind of clear, still recognition, like seeing something you had known for a while finally in the light. I got up at 5:30. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything, every charge on the card, every date, every amount. I wrote down the Savannah receipt. I wrote down the things that had been moved in my house, and the things that had been asked for, and the things that had simply been taken. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my bank. I reported the unauthorized charges and requested a new card number. The woman on the phone was patient and precise, and did not ask me to explain more than I offered. The process would take 2 to 3 business days for the new card. In the meantime, the old number would be flagged. The second call was to a man named Gerald, who had been Raymond's attorney for 15 years and who had become, in the years since, something like a trusted friend to me. I had not called Gerald about anything serious since we updated my will the year after Raymond died. I told him what had happened. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Patricia, I'll have some paperwork ready for you by Thursday. You don't have to decide everything now, but let's make sure your assets are protected." I thanked him and hung up. By the time Renee came downstairs at 9:30, I had finished my coffee, watered the rosemary on the windowsill, and started reading the novel Cora had recommended for book club. I did not mention the phone calls. I said good morning and asked if she wanted eggs. She said she was thinking more about the Savannah trip, and had I had a chance to think about it. "I have," I said. "I'm not going to be able to put that on my card." The pleasantness flickered. Just briefly. "Oh," she said. "Why not?" "It doesn't work for me," I said, simply, without elaboration. Raymond had taught me that a reason offered freely becomes something to argue with. A simple statement of position offers nothing to push against. She tried several angles over the next 2 days. She mentioned how stressful things had been. She mentioned that Marcus was really struggling. She mentioned, once, that it wasn't a big deal. It was just a hotel. Each time I said some version of the same thing, "It doesn't work for me." I kept my voice even. I kept my face pleasant. I was my mother's daughter, and my mother had known how to hold a line with grace. On Wednesday evening, Marcus came to find me in the garden. The sun was low, and the light was the particular gold of Georgia in September, and he stood at the edge of the garden beds with his hands in his pockets, the way he used to stand as a boy, when he had done something he wasn't sure how to account for. "Mom," he said, "Renee told me you won't help with the trip." "That's right," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "She's really been looking forward to it." I straightened up and looked at my son. He was gray at the temples now, which still surprised me. I could still see the boy who climbed this peach tree and scraped his knee on the lowest branch, and came inside to have me wash the cut. "Marcus," I said, "I need to talk to you about some things." I told him about the charges on the card. I named the amounts and the dates. I did not raise my voice. I watched his face move through several expressions. Confusion, then something uncomfortable, then a defensive stiffening. "Those were small things," he said. I was going to tell you. When? I asked. He didn't answer. There's also the Savannah Hotel, I said. He looked at me. She already booked it, I said. On my old card number. I found the receipt. The silence that followed was long. A car passed on the street. The peach tree moved a little in the evening air. Mum, I'm not angry with you, I said, and I meant it. Anger requires surprise, and I had moved past surprise somewhere in the dark at 5:30 that morning. But I need you to understand what has happened in this house for the past 3 weeks. I need you to actually see it. He sat down on the garden bench. He looked like Raymond, in that moment the same shape of the jaw, the same way of sitting forward with his elbows on his knees when something was heavy. I didn't know about all of it, he said, quietly. I know, I said. I should have. Yes. We sat there in the gold light for a while. Neither of us said anything. There are conversations that don't need to be finished to be understood, and this was one of them. Lily arrived the following Saturday, the same day the new card came in the mail. She helped me in the garden in the morning, and we had lunch at the table. Just the two of us. Marcus and Renee had been quiet since Wednesday, and Renee had stopped coming downstairs when I was in the kitchen. After lunch, Lily helped me go through the legal documents Gerald had sent over, the updated beneficiary arrangements, and the property protections that I had been putting off since Raymond died. We sat at the kitchen table with the papers and the rosemary on the windowsill, and the afternoon light moving across the room. You okay, Grandma? She asked. I am, I said. She looked at me in the steady way she had. I'm better than okay, I said. I think I've just been quiet for too long. She smiled. It was Raymond's smile, the one that understood without requiring explanation. 2 days later, Marcus came to me before breakfast. Renee was still upstairs. He sat across from me at the table and folded his hands and looked at me with the expression of a man who had spent several nights confronting things he hadn't let himself see. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. Not just for the card. He paused. For the whole 3 weeks. For coming here and not. He stopped. For letting you disappear inside your own house. Those were his words. Disappear inside your own house. I had not used those words with him. He had found them himself, somewhere in the quiet of the past few days, and that mattered to me more than he probably knew. Thank you, I said. I didn't see what was happening, he said. I don't know if that's an excuse. I think maybe it's just the truth. It can be both, I said. He looked at me. Are we okay? I thought about Raymond planting the peach tree. I thought about painting the trim while Raymond did the ceilings. I thought about 31 years at the school board and 27 years in this house and 63 years of building a life that was mine and nobody else's. We're going to be okay, I said. But things are going to be different. He nodded. He seemed relieved by that, which was something I had not expected, as if he too had been waiting for something to shift. Renee and Marcus moved back to Atlanta the following weekend. There was no dramatic scene, no final confrontation. They packed the luggage that had spread into every corner of my house, and Renee thanked me for my hospitality in the surface-level pleasant way she had, and I said she was welcome, and I meant it, because I had stopped holding on to things that didn't belong to me anymore. I stood on the porch and watched them drive away. Then I went inside and moved the armchair back. The weeks after that were quieter than they had been in a long time, but it was the right kind of quiet, the kind that belongs to you, that you can sit in without apology. Cora came over on Thursday for book club, just the two of us, and we talked more than we read, the way we always did. My neighbor Frank from 2 houses down brought me tomatoes from his garden, and we stood on the porch and talked about the weather and nothing important and everything comfortable. Marcus called on Sunday. He always called on Sunday. But this time he asked about the book club and about the peach tree and whether I'd thought about planting anything new this fall. He asked the way you ask when you are actually interested in the answer. I told him I'd been thinking about a fig tree. Dad always wanted a fig tree, he said. I know, I said. I think it's time. Lily came to visit the last weekend of October and helped me choose the spot near the back fence where the light was best in the afternoon. We dug the hole together and settled the tree in and packed the soil, and she took a photograph of me standing next to it with dirt on my hands and my hair coming loose from the braid, and I looked at that photograph later and thought, that is what a woman looks like when she is standing on solid ground. I thought about the morning I found the receipt. How I had stood at the kitchen drawer for a long time, in the quiet, understanding something I had been letting myself not know. How I had not cried. How I had simply waited until the knowing settled. And then I had made coffee and sat down at my own table in my own house and decided, dignity is a quiet thing. People talk about it as though it is something you have to demand, something you wave in front of others until they recognize it. But in my experience, dignity is a decision you make in private before anyone else wakes up. While the coffee is brewing and the morning light is moving across the floor, it has nothing to do with the people who didn't see you. It has everything to do with whether you see yourself. I see myself clearly now, and the fig tree is going to be beautiful in the spring.